you missed part one, you are welcome to check out the recording of it if you feel the need to catch up. I want to welcome Dr. Alan Shark. He is our presenter today. I know I left our last meeting with a lot of new information, and I really appreciated it, and I'm looking forward to today's presentation as well. We have almost 40 people signed up to attend today from 5 different states. So I thought, as a quick little introduction in the chat, that if you would please identify yourself and your city and state, that would be kind of fun, because we've got 5 different people or 5 different states represented in this call today, and I think that that's pretty fun. So I'll start. Mary Lee Abrams. I am the mayor of Maplewood, Minnesota. So I am going to turn this over to Dr. Alan Shark. We have 1 hour, and I want to make sure that we use our time wisely. He's got a lot of great information for us. Today, our focus will be on ethics and bias in AI, and I'm sure it is going to be another great presentation. So welcome, everyone. And Dr. Shark, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for waking up and joining me for a cup of coffee. I think this is an ingenious time frame to do this, and hopefully I can keep you awake while you're getting up and having your coffee. Although I think you in the Midwest are used to getting up much earlier, which is great. So this is part 2 in a series of 3. And I look forward to sharing the latest information. And I can tell you this is the latest. I'm getting my presentation up here. And this is probably the more serious of the 3 presentations, because it's like my statistics teacher saying, this course is going to be fun. And he said it with such enthusiasm. He said, this is going to really be boring. And I have to tell you, he was right. I'm not going to say that about ethics and bias and the like, but I think this is like required reading. This is the part 2, which is the sobriety test. This is where we kind of get a better sense of AI's limitations and things that we have to kind of watch out for. So yeah, we're going to talk about the implications of ethics, bias, and implementation. If you recall, when we began this little journey last month, we went back to basic definitions, because everything is AI, or is it? So we know that artificial intelligence, simply defined, is a noun. It's a theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. That's a pretty powerful statement, and it's just one long sentence, and it has so much meaning to it. So I look at it from the point of view of, where are we today? Because a lot of people are worried about job displacement, not only for yourselves, but for those who you know. And that's where I kind of came up with something called augmented intelligence, which is where I believe we are now. Very similar. But note, this is the theory and development of computer systems able to supplement, and the key word here, like augmented, supplemental human decision-making, planning, and forecasting based on abundant sources of quality data. What we didn't define, however, is where all the attention is today, which is generative AI. In fact, it's become such commonplace, although to us, most of us, it's only 2 years old or young. And so now we're dealing with Gen AI. Generative AI. So I thought it might be helpful to kind of take a look at why this may be different than the other 2 definitions. They're all related, of course. So generative AI refers to artificial intelligence systems designed to create new content, such as text, images, music, or video, by learning from existing data. And these systems use machine learning models, like neural networks, to generate original outputs that mimic or expand upon the patterns found in their training data. Common examples include AI to all sorts of realistic images and human-like text. And I got to tell you, I use this to write poetry, and I give it full attribution. I just say, give me the credit for the prompter, but that's it. It is incredible. And notice this is saying original information. Now, some people are wondering how original, where is it really coming from? Well, that is the way it's designed, this so-called reasoning. So when you think about this, if this is creating stuff based on us, one has to start to think, what about ethics? What about bias? And there's another word I'm going to throw into this whole mix. So ethical AI challenges are very real. And it's something that as long as we are aware of them and confront them intelligently as humans, we can overcome these challenges. But it starts with being aware. Now, notice this cartoon here. This is AI generated. So it's kind of fun. Does this exist anywhere else? No. This totally spontaneous was drawn by a prompt from me. And it wasn't the first quote unquote take. It took a couple of renditions. Said, no, I need something else. I want something a little different. So you're kind of communicating with these systems to improve the final product that you're looking for. So I always say, do never underestimate the power of the prompt. The way these systems are designed, they are designed to give you results that you're looking for. So if you don't get it the first time, keep asking. Now, it'll keep a record of what you've asked, but it won't remember it. As soon as you ask for, say, a poem, it'll give it to you, and you can check on your files, and it will be right there what you asked, when you asked, what date. So it has a record of everything that you have, put in the inquiry, everything that it generated. But if you ask that question 10 minutes later, it may give you a totally different poem and a totally different answer. So it's kind of interesting. It doesn't necessarily in its memory remember what you asked it. So don't be afraid to ask and ask and ask and ask it differently. Try a different word and maybe even try different AI agents. You might get a different results. So we have to think about ethics and bias because that's the topic. And this is something that concerns so many of us, especially in the public sector, because we have something at stake that most companies don't have, and that's trust. And unlike private companies, where if you don't like Lowe's, you can go to Home Depot or vice versa, if someone doesn't like living in a particular city or county, they don't have the luxury of simply moving, although theoretically they could. So bias is a tendency to favor or lean towards a particular perspective, person, or idea, often in an unfair and unbalanced way. It can result from personal beliefs, preferences, or assumptions, and can affect decision making, judgment, or behavior. It can be conscious, which we call explicit, or it can be unconscious, implicit, and both can be dangerous. I've talked to people and said, well, I'm not biased. And then you start listening to them. And then suddenly you realize, oh my goodness, they don't even realize that they are displaying biases based on human norms. And then one can argue, what is a norm? That's a whole other debate when it comes to philosophy. Ethics is the branch of philosophy that deals with principles of right and wrong behavior. It involves a study of moral values and rules that guide individuals in making decisions about what is good, just, or fair in various situations. It helps people determine how to act reasonably and responsibly and treat others with respect. Those are more aspirational. We can go back in time and look at the Victorian age. People had a very different sense of morals or ethics or bias. So this is subject to human values, and that changes. But don't forget, AI is learning from us. And that kind of scares us. It's learning from us. It's getting all this different data that it's trained on. And so all our biases and our ethics that we may consider, well, that's not ethical, or that is ethical, or this is bias, or it's picking it up. And the question is, can these systems navigate through this and pick up on current norms? So why is this so important when it comes to artificial intelligence? Well, they are critical because they directly impact how AI systems make decisions, interact with us, and can really influence society if we're not careful. So here are 4 areas that I think we need to kind of become aware of. I think we are, but it just helps in this time frame to review what they are. Fairness and equity, where AI systems can inherit biases from the data they're trained on, which can lead to unfair or discriminatory outcomes. Ensuring ethical practices helps us to minimize bias and promote fairness, avoiding discrimination against certain groups based on race, gender, or other characteristics. We have a mandate, of course, in government to kind of resist the contrary. We expect the same from our systems. So that leads us to number two, trust and accountability. We have to be able to trust AI systems, especially when they're used in critical areas like healthcare, law enforcement, or hiring. This is where ethical guidelines help to ensure that AI behaves transparently, responsibly, holding developers and users accountable for its impact. This is where it is helpful sometimes to go back to the source. All too often, we're happy with the results that we may ask of an AI system like ChatGPT or Perplexity AI or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini. Each one has its own strength, but we have to make sure that the information that we're getting is indeed trustworthy. So let's move on to the next, which would be safety and well-being. Because if there are unchecked biases or unethical AI, this can lead to harmful decisions that affect individuals' lives and well-being. This is kind of scary because it may not be apparent. When these agents, these AI agents, print out things or talk to us, they talk to us with clarity. They talk to us with authority. And it would be very easy to take this and saying, oh, well, it came out of the system. It must be right. But there are real consequences. And I'll give you a couple of good examples in a minute. And then finally, autonomy and privacy, where ethical concerns need to address and do address how AI respects human autonomy and privacy. And therefore, AI must be designed to protect individual rights, avoid intrusive or manipulative behaviors, and ensure people retain control over how AI systems affect them. In all the guidelines that I read from all the local governments across the country, the one thing in common is that the local government has the need and the right to unplug the system if all things fail. So I want to give you an example of things that we have to be aware of. So in the book that I mentioned last week, and I hope last month, I hope you consider getting a copy. It's relatively inexpensive, but you can get it on Amazon. You can get it Barnes and Noble, even all the places that sell books. It's available in a Kindle edition or print. And all the art that you're seeing was basically generated by DALL-E, which is part of ChatGPT. And I have to say it was a challenge because I, as a human being, am trying to navigate bias. I want things to represent society at large. So I asked him for a cartoon sketch. I should say I asked it. It's not a him or a she. And I said, here are the cartoon sketches showing a human interacting with a chatbot on a computer screen. So this looks fine. And initially, I had it in the book as a draft. And then I thought, every time I ask one of these agents, all of them, what I get is a man, and I get somebody who is clearly not a person of color. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure that's the image I want to create for the overall book. There's nothing wrong with this picture. But if every picture is a male and every picture shows a white complexion, how representative is that of society? So I struggled and I realized it and woke up in the middle and I said, that's wrong. I got to make some changes here in the book. So then I went back and then here's the updated cartoon sketches now featuring a human with darker skin interacting with a chatbot on a computer screen. Ta-da! I accepted the one on the left. Now I can tell you, I also struggled with gender. I had to go out of my way. I said, hey, we need some women in this. And I did a section on creating the chief AI officer. And I asked, I need this to be a woman because they gave me, once again, a male, and they did it. So we have to be conscious all the time of these kind of challenges. So I mentioned there's another word that I think is important, and this is prejudice. And you don't see this mentioned too much because I think people believe it's covered both in bias and in ethics. So the question is, where does prejudice fit into AI concerns? And I thought about this and I wrote an article for Route 50 a month or two ago, and it's still there. Making AI better than us, what could possibly go wrong? And the thinking here was I write these commentaries every month, and I thought, if AI is taking all our biases, all the things it's getting from our training materials, and we're not catching some of the things it is picking up on, it's like a child we hear a terrible word. I remember, a very long time ago when somebody rear-ended me and I was taking my then very 5-year-old, 6-year-old son to daycare. And it just, the impact was pretty harsh. And my loving little son turned to me and he said, "Jesus Christ, Dad," right? In this loving little voice. And I thought, where did he get that from? In a slang curse word kind of manner. Here's this young little kid. Where did he hear that from? He heard it from his dad. Um, and so the same thing is with artificial intelligence. It's picking up us. So our challenge is, can we expect artificial intelligence to be better than us? And then whose biases do we put in there? Because there are people who we might say is biased, but they'll turn around and say, no, we're biased, especially when you think of the political environment that we live in. This is a toughie. And some people worry that if we don't figure this out, that AI will either continue with what it has learned, or it will make some corrections and give us things that will perhaps alienate a number of people. So it is an ongoing challenge. And people are still wrestling with this to this day because what these systems have already been trained on is done. How do I go back to my young little son and say, you shouldn't use that, what you just said, as in the swear context? Of course, try to describe swearing context to a young kid like that. It probably isn't going to work, but adults, it can. And that is really our challenge. So prejudice does work its way into all of this. And in the context of AI, it really refers to unfair or biased attitudes that are embedded in AI systems, leading to discriminatory outcomes. It often arises when AI systems reflect existing social biases in the training data or in the algorithms themselves. So, discriminatory decision making. I have seen some examples, and this is even before AI, where there's been such a over-reliance of technology that governments have used to determine eligibility in certain programs, social services. And now suddenly we're seeing studies that show, and studies unfortunately are always 5 years too late by the time they get published and the like, but they're instructive nevertheless. What is being found is that many of these programs that we rely on to determine eligibility, whether it be for a mortgage, whether it be for public housing, whether it be for public health, certain referrals, certain benefits, either by state, locality, or even federal, are based on formulas. And they're based on other factors. If any of the factors that go into that decision are flawed, the outcome could be disastrous. And so, what this study that I'm thinking about, and there are more, there's quite a few that show that unsuspecting government workers have put together their own logarithms, their own formulas that are inherently biased against certain populations within our communities. It has also been found that this was absolutely 100% unintentional. But these are the ones that were studied. There may be some that were intentional, and that's always a possibility. Manipulation of the formulas. So AI is just an accelerant. It takes what's already there and makes it easier to digest, easier to probe, but it's also something that we have to worry about because I guess one would be over reliance on technology and what it all means. So that's where I've come in with discriminatory decision making is a real problem. So when AI systems are used in high stakes areas like hiring, law enforcement, or healthcare, they can perpetuate or even exacerbate existing prejudice. For example, an AI used for hiring might favor resumes from certain demographic groups if it has learned from biased historical hiring data. Now, the city of New York actually commissioned its first study by the city, and their biggest concern was the use of AI in making hiring decisions. Most of the agents that are online today are using AI to filter out certain resumes as to whose resume actually gets to the HR desk or not. And New York City was on the forefront. This is like 3 years ago. We're studying and coming up with recommendations so that there would be an area of redress. Somebody could challenge the decision not to be hired, and that they had the need to mention that AI was being used decision to alert the public as a means of transparency, say there is some automation here, and if you feel that you're being discriminated, here's the process to go through. So such prejudice can manifest as unfairly targeting or excluding certain groups, reinforcing stereotypes, or making unjust decisions that impact people's lives. So reinforcement of stereotypes, it can reinforce harmful stereotypes if it learns biased patterns from the data. Could be a language model trained on text containing gender stereotypes. It might generate biased responses or associations, for example, associating with women with certain occupations, with men and others. This can contribute to a cycle of prejudice where the outputs of AI systems reinforce the biased attitudes present in the training data. So we have a need for fairness and accountability, and we have to address prejudice, which means we have to figure out ways to actively detect and mitigate and prevent bias in the algorithms themselves and data sets. Now, one thing that I hear all the time is, well, we're at the mercy of the vendor community. Well, that may be true. We need to hold them accountable if we are purchasing systems from them. We need to have some kind of certification that they have made every effort. And we need to test out these things to make sure that anything that we are purchasing or utilizing adheres to a very high standard, and they have to have penalties. It'll be interesting. We're just at the very beginning of these new relationships. On the other hand, I'm aware that some local governments are actually employing kind of what I would call AI light internally. I know in one county in Nevada, they have a successful search system that is somewhat AI and machine learning generated, but it is the most powerful search tool I've ever seen, allowing this agent to go into any domain that you give it permission to within your government, and it will find things. And you can be pretty chatty. It's like, there was this memo I think I wrote in November 5 years ago, and it may come back with a true hit. So that's just the beginning. So there are some homegrown things that filter that can help us assure ourselves that we are addressing some of these very issues. There's also the need for accountability. And this goes to the developers and the companies that do all this and the regulators that ensure that AI systems are fair and do not contribute to social harm. So this requires probably federal government intervention with some guidelines, as they are doing in Europe. So I want to turn attention to something a little closer to what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and that's copyright. This is an ongoing battle, and it's kind of scary. There's a number of court cases that are active today by the New York Times and other publications and authors where they're concerned that AI has been trained on their content and that it is now being made readily available without attribution in many ways, or they're taking intellectual property and making it something that finds itself in the public domain. So people may be surprised, oh, I know copyright, but you start digging in, you realize there's a lot to it, especially when we think about what we publish, how we publish as government. So the use of copyrighted data for training, all the models that I mentioned earlier have been trained in our stuff. And in terms of image generation, they often require large data sets for training. These data sets may include copyrighted materials, books, images, music, etc. So they're all being trained on our stuff. And then it's also using copyrighted works without permission, which may infringe on the rights of the original creators. They're opening ongoing debates about whether such constitutes fair use, especially when AI somehow transforms the data. And then there's a question of ownership of AI generated content. For example, the AI book, the primer for state and local government, I'm told, and I'm happy with this, I can copyright the book in terms of the way it has been presented, but technically none of the art is covered in copyright. And that's just where we are today. Even though the systems that generate it will say this is absolutely original. I mean, there is no octopus sitting on top of mounds of data, both structured and unstructured, which is the prompt, which happens to be the cover of the book that I wrote. In a sense, technically, that cannot be copyrighted. So, ownership. When AI creates content such as writing, artwork, or music, there still is a question: who owns the copyright? Traditional copyright law requires a human author for copyright protection. So our laws have not really caught up with what's going on in the technology front. And since AI lacks personhood, it is unclear whether AI generated works can be copyrighted or not. And if it can't be copyrighted, it might enter the public domain, meaning anyone could use it freely. Alternatively, the copyright might belong to the person or organization that trained it in the first place. Interesting concept. Then you have derivative works, which is content that closely resembles existing copyrighted material, may be considered a derivative work subject to copyright protection. And this could raise issues if an AI unintentionally recreates content that is too similar to a copyrighted work, potentially infringing on the original copyright. So the definition over the years of copyright has expanded. It's expanded to protecting the content creator, and it's expanded from giving attribution to the source. It is now saying, and I teach at a university, and we have systems that when students submit papers, it's checked for plagiarism. It's kind of like copyright, not giving attribution. But the definition has changed there as well. And that is if a student giving full attribution over quotes uses lots of quotes, then it is being judged for lack of original thought. Hence, the student will get a lesser grade. If they do too much, it may be considered plagiarism. So we have to be careful of these deviations of work that may be similar. We see this being challenged in music, where suddenly someone said that music is you stole that from my song, and then you have to have judges saying, well, it's pretty close and not, and then they have to decide. And then copyright in AI algorithms and models. Now, this is where developers create, they may be subject to copyright or other intellectual property protection. Companies might protect their proprietary AI models, raising questions about how much information needs to be disclosed, especially in open source projects. And then you have licensing, which you may need to have licensing agreements, may be necessary for AI trained systems or copyrighted content. Things to think about. So what is going on? Well, we're not sitting idly back. I would say that this state, probably hundreds of cities and counties across the country, have some kind of policy or guideline that governs them in terms of the use or the appropriate use of AI. The one that came to my mind that got the most attention, and one of the first in the nation, happened in Tempe, Arizona, where they adopted one of the first ethical AI policies to get ahead of the risk. And it was put together by the chief data officer for the city of Tempe, Arizona. I thought it was pretty remarkable. I have interviewed her on my podcasts. So the scope of this policy is quite widespread, covers many things, and many people will argue, should it be a policy, should it be a guideline? And there are differences. The policy basically sets forth the general principles. People worry that a policy, unless there's a lot of flexibility built into it, will become outdated in 6 months to a year. And I agree with that. Whereas guidelines, that can change at any time and therefore gives greater flexibility at a time when things are moving very quickly. Both statements are true. So the question is, which is better? It really depends upon the jurisdiction. In the case of Tempe, the chief data officer felt it was important to have the full backing of the city council, and they voted unanimously for the policy. But they gave total leeway to the creation of guidelines as where the flexibility would exist. But they announced all these great principles as a preamble of future thinking from all departments, agencies, employees, contractors, stakeholders. So it is far reaching. The message is clear. This is for everybody in the city. Wherever AI functionality is deployed, this falls under the policy. So monumental in many ways, but this one that got my attention, this one little part of this overall policy, which you can get online. The full policy is in my book, Human AI Collaboration. We will encourage collaboration between humans and AI systems, leveraging the strengths of both to enhance decision-making processes and ensure that ultimate controls remains with humans. So it's an interesting word for partnership. Partnership in this case is not 50-50. It's like we will work together We will learn to work with machines, but we ultimately are in control. Okay, and that was June 2023. So let's fast forward to right now. We're soon to release a new study. We do a number of studies every year, and this is our second annual AI City County Government Survey that we just completed just a couple of days ago. It has not been released, but I want to share one slide with you. And we asked CIOs across the nation, and this is a national sample, what concerns do you have regarding the impact of Gen AI on your local government's technology workforce, including contractors and staff augmentation? You can take a look and see what these are. But in the course of our discussion today, thing, privacy, bias and fairness, and ethical concerns. Those are three major areas. All the others could actually fit into that too. But this shows the current thinking and the worry when you look at these kind of things. Are we being fair? Do we display any bias? Are we protecting our citizens' privacy? And what about ethics? So the next frontier of AI, and we're going to have fun when we talk in November, because we're talking about future. Where are we going? What different horizons can we look at? What can we expect? And that will be fun. But we're already talking to robots, and that's where I'm looking at the power of voice. We're talking to robots already, toys, in education, and the like in the lab. But the emerging power of voice is now coming to AI, right? So we're talking to Amazon Alexa, and I will point this out. Alexa's 9 years old. ChatGPT is only 4 years old, maybe 3.5. And then we have all sorts of voice activated controls in our vehicles. We have Siri that's getting smarter all the time as well. And we're talking to our television remotes. We're talking to all these systems. Everything has voice command. And now the artificial intelligence agents that are available to us, some for free for a while, which won't last forever. I will predict next month about the rising costs and what that means for us. But we're talking to these systems, and now we can converse with them. So one of the things I'll mention next time in November is if you haven't seen it recently, take a look through Netflix of the movie Her. It is an amazing movie that didn't quite get the attention that people thought it would. This came out in 2013. We're now 2024. You watch it today, and you will be mesmerized by how far thinking they were. My thing is this weekend, take a look at Her. You'll enjoy it. But not everyone speaks the same language. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 68 million people speak a language other than English, and 8.2% are considered to have limited English proficiency. This tells us that there are some challenges when we turn to voice. We're talking about ethics, we're talking about bias or prejudice. What are we signaling to our populations if they don't pick up the nuances or interpret some of these things the wrong way or not being able to understand at all? So I was made aware, which is fun. I was doing an interview for Virginia Public Radio, and I was asked to respond to a survey, which I had never heard about, where which accents does AI find hardest to understand? I thought, okay, one thing I understand language, hence the previous slide, but now we're talking about accents. So look at this. Southern accents, number one for AI being the hardest to understand. Number two, New York City, New Jersey. But look at this, Minnesotan, you're there, number 13. So you get a sense, and this is like the top 20. It was an eye-opener to say, I never thought of accents. So I mentioned this could be a pretty dry presentation. I want to take a quick break and share with you something of humor, because this has been a pretty serious conversation, but hopefully you'll enjoy this little clip that really demonstrates the humor, in this case, of having a dialect.
What's the buttons?
Oh no, they installed voice recognition technology in this lift. I heard about this.
Voice recognition technology? In a lift? In Scotland? You ever tried voice recognition technology?
No.
They don't do Scottish accents.
11.
Could you please repeat that?
11.
11. 11.
11.
Could you please repeat that?
11.
Whose idea was this? You need to try an American accent. 11. 11.
That sounds Irish, no American.
What, doesn't it? 11.
Where in America is that? Dublin?
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
Try an English accent, right? 11. 11.
You for the same part of England as Dick Van Dyke?
Listen, yours then, smart ass.
Please speak slowly and clearly.
Smart ass.
11.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
11. If you don't understand the lingo, away back home to your own country.
Ooh, is that talk now, is it? Away back to your own country?
Oh, don't start, Mr. Bleeding Heart. How can you be racist to a lift?
Please speak slowly and clearly.
11. 11. 11. 11.
You're just saying it the same way.
I'm going to keep saying it till I understand Scottish, alright? 11. 11. 11. 11.
I'll just take us anywhere, you cow. Just open the doors.
This is a voice-activated elevator. Please state which floor you would like to go to in a clear and calm manner.
Calm. Calm. Where's that coming from? Why is it telling people to be calm?
Because they knew they'd be selling this to Scottish people who'd be going off for nuts at it.
You have not selected a floor.
Aye, we have. 11.
If you would like to get out of the elevator without selecting a floor, simply say, "Open the doors, please."
Please. Please. Suck my wally.
Maybe we should just say please.
I'm not begging that for nothing.
Open the doors, please.
Please. Pathetic.
Please remain calm.
Oh, fine! What you went up tonight? Get up there! Hey, just wait for it to speak.
You have not selected a floor.
Ah, mules, you cow! You don't let us through these doors. I'm going to come to America. I'm going to find whatever desperate actress gave you a voice, and I'm going to go in an electric chair for you.
Scotland, you bastard!
Scotland!
Scotland!
Scotland! Freedom!
Going up.
A little bit of fun. So other challenges, customer dissatisfaction. We have to worry about this in terms of handling escalations from AI systems. If an AI system cannot resolve customer issues and satisfactorily, call takers may face a higher volume of escalated, frustrated customers. Dealing with complex, high-emotion situations could become more frequent, requiring excellent problem-solving communication skills. So it's either going to be on AI or us, or a combination of both. And then we have to worry about negative perceptions of AI use. It's one thing for us to worry about it, but the public is a bit worried about it, although some studies show that some people would rather converse with an AI agent feeling it's going to be less biased than a human. I was surprised. But some citizens may feel uncomfortable interacting with AI systems or express frustration at the lack of human contact. So it could lead to more complaints. We always say if you're going to use these in the case of chatbots, whether it be text or voice, you identify that agent as being AI powered, and that if at any time they'd like to speak to a human, press certain button, press the pound sign or something like that. So that it's a disclaimer, so we're not pretending to be something that we're not. We're better managing expectations. Other challenges, we have to worry about privacy in terms of what we collect and how we process large amounts of personal data, even within the calls that we may be taking, any communication we have with our citizens. And then fairness in decision-making that is AI-based. If they are involved in such decision-making, such as eligibility, determinations, or recommendations, In this case, call takers may worry about the fairness and transparency of these decisions, particularly the technology produced bias outcomes. So we have to worry about handling non-digital users too. This gets back into language preferences, cultural divides, and the like. But we always, I listen to people talking about technology, 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 but there's a surprising percentage of folks in this country who live here who don't interact in the ways that we expect. They don't have computers. They are not necessarily digital literate. They may not speak the language. They may not understand the culture. We have to be concerned and make sure that as we move into AI systems, and we will, I think we're going to have to, based on all the economic pressures that local governments face, we just have to always acknowledge there are people that's still going to need the paper and the human contact. And then some may have the perception of AI as impersonal. This hasn't totally manifested yet, but we are watching. Some citizens clearly prefer human touch and may view AI-powered systems as impersonal or dehumanizing. Could frustrate them. But at the moment, it's 50-50. We also have to worry about errors and hallucinations. This may correct itself in future generations, but right now, we do have hallucinations that occur. And this is kind of surprising. There are so many examples where it gives you information that looks so incredibly real, but it's made up. And that is in part the way the AI systems were originally developed, to anticipate what it is you're looking for. And that's their first concern. What is it you're looking for, and give it to you, not what are you searching for and let me find it. They're wrestling now, going back to the logarithms and refining it. But I was getting some horrific outputs that were totally wrong, but they looked right. So we have to be careful of things not being accurate or even coherent or even relevant to what we may have asked. But I have seen massive improvements in the last 6 months. But it was so bad that the term hallucinations became commonplace. Again, Gen AI is programmed to anticipate the proper response as much or more so than merely reciting back stored information. And hallucinations occur in various contexts, including natural language processing, image generation, and other machine learning applications. We also have to worry about data protection in terms of what we collect, because data is the foundation of AI. How secure is it? How private is it? Who has access under what conditions? And then how is data classified? Because many times when I talk to local government people, data is so decentralized that even though there may be governing policies, they're not always followed. I see this even at the individual staff level when somebody leaves and then suddenly one finds later, perhaps too late, that most of the valuable files were saved on a perhaps government issued laptop on a local drive and never put in a shared drive. Or no one ever followed common standards of filing so that people could say, well, I know this file has to be there, but I have no idea. This person had the most remarkable way of filing things that no one else can figure it out. So coming attractions, November 8th, part 3, the future. So I just want to mention that for those of you who really enjoy going back to school or getting certified, we've got some great certification programs. And 2, I want to flag very quickly, and that is we have a Midwest cohort that begins March 19th. This is our Certified Government CIO program. It's 1 year, but that doesn't mean you're going to class every day. It's once a month. It's very, very doable. We're in our 12th, 13th year, and we're creating this new cohort for you in the Midwest. Now, it's open to others as well, but this will be the next one, March 19th. The other one is our Digital Service Professional, recognizing the growing need for more trained individuals and the need for certification. So we have a government certified digital service professional designation. Both of these two are in partnership with Rutgers University School of Government Services. So you get a nice degree at the end, well, not really a degree, a certificate, but it has PTI seal and it has Rutgers seal. It looks like a master's degree. It's gotten very, very, very high ratings and marks over the years. And then for those of you in the Midwest and anywhere, we hope you can join us November 19th to 21st in Minneapolis, where we are fusing the best of PTI and Fusion, where we have our GovIT Leadership Summit and Symposium. Last year we had about 500 people, and you probably received lots of information. I can tell you the hotel is right by the airport. You're at the Mall of America. There's a lot to do, although we'll keep you busy during your time with our conference. So with that, I'm going to leave the remaining time for any questions or comments. You could disagree or the like. And note that the notes taken through this series is done by Zoom AI. Scary, right? So I'm all ears for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shark. What a great presentation. Let's see, does anyone have any questions? You can switch your cameras back on, or you can put a question into the chat. Any questions this morning?
Is everybody awake? No.
I see one, Jan Jensen.
Thank you. That symposium that you just mentioned in November the 21st and 22nd, I think it was.
Yes.
You said, would that be advertised through Fusion? Mary question.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the easiest URL, yes, it's everywhere. But if you're looking for a quick URL, just go to pti.org and it'll take you right there.
I can put it in the chat to Jan and everybody, the link to the site. I'll do that now.
Thanks, Mary. That would be very helpful. I see a question in the chat from Lana. Where is the U.S. government in dealing with ethical questions you have posed?
About 5 years ago, the Office of Science and Technology, which is part of the White House, created an AI initiative, and they have perfected it over the various administrations. And a lot happened under the Trump administration, and a lot happened under the Biden administration. It's almost like, forget about the national politics. They've carried the mantle very well between the technical folks. Where they are is they've created guidelines and they've created frameworks. This is such a new area. One of the fears, I guess, people have is if they intervene too quickly, they may thwart the growth of this new technology. So I think the best we can look for from the federal government is better guidelines. And ultimately, my hope is that just like we have FedRAMP, and I'll get to that in a second to define what that is, that they will have a certification agency. This is my desire, that would certify many of these logarithms and these companies, because there aren't that many. You know, everyone is pulling from the same companies. There's only 5 companies, and the question is, how many of those 5 companies will exist in 5 years? Because right now they're living on borrowed time in terms of capital financing, speculative financing. ChatGPT, the parent of that, just raised $6.2 billion. But you know, that sounds nice, but somehow they've got to pay that money back to the investors. And they're not the only ones raising money. There's an amazing race. So my hope is that the federal government will become more than one that just issues frameworks. FedRAMP was created a number of years ago to help all the federal government agencies figure out what vendors conform to the best cybersecurity practices. Because, you know, all these agencies were being pushed to move many of their operations into the cloud, just like we are facing at the local government level and the state government level. And in so doing, they were unsure, you know, who had the securest environment. FedRAMP was created by Congress. It's been around for a while, and it's gotten better all the time. There's a very stringent requirement or set of requirements. They've got to be certified, and they have outside evaluators looking at it. So therefore, when somebody purchases a cloud contract or some application in the cloud, and they say FedRAMP certified, that gives that person a comfort in that decision. That's what I think we need for artificial intelligence, because we are totally beholden to the vendor community, and they cross many, many states. They're very large. They're going to be more international. We need help, but at least we have a framework. They're working on it. They're developing research and the like.
Thank you for that answer. Anyone else have any questions? I see that Mary put in the link to the Government Leadership Summit and Symposium. I have seen the advertisement come into my email, and Mary indicated there are incredible thought leaders and speakers from around the country and Minnesota to discuss AI, cybersecurity, digital services, leadership, and a host of other timely topics. And then join us. It looks like it's going to be a really great conference. Pretty exciting. Any other questions? Mr. Sable, your mic is off. Or
I
on.
was just going to say, so Joe Sheeran, one of Maplewood staff, is one of the presenters at this year's conference. And so if you want to be entertained and informed, Joe was going to do a great job, and we're excited he's going to be part of that.
Joe Sheeran is our communications manager, and you will be entertained, but his wealth of knowledge is very impressive about communications. Joe, I think you were still on here. I see you're on here, I think. I thought he was. I thought maybe we could ask him to at least give us a little highlight on what it is he's going to be speaking about. Joe?
I'm here. I thought Mary put a typo when I saw my name when she asked me to present. I said, she must have, sometimes you put Joe and then it auto-populates. I thought it was a mistake in auto-populate when my name came up. No, but we're gonna do the IT Symposium Slam, and I'm going to talk a lot about sort of plain language. We deal with a lot of complex issues, and to kind of take a page from Dr. Shark, he does a really nice job of talking about complex issues in a very presentable way. So when you're talking as IT professionals with your staff, really breaking it down at that base level so they get it.
Thank you for that. And you will be entertained. Thanks for that. Anyone else? Okay, it looks like then we have a couple of extra minutes. Let me remind you that Mary is going to be sending out a survey to all of you. If you could please fill that in, that would be excellent. And Mary, can you remind us what is the next date of our November? I'm trying to pull it up on my calendar. I believe it's November 8th will be part 3 of our AI presentations with Dr. Sharp. So please come back for that. Also, we will have the video of this program available, and Mary will send that out afterwards as well. So please fill in your survey, and I'm going to give you back, it looks like about 6 minutes of time to your day. Mary, did you want to say something?
No, I just want to thank Dr. Alan Shark again for his time. We're so pleased to have him on our team and working with all of our PTI members across the country. Thanks again to those who came from outside of Minnesota, but also thanks to all of you who came this morning. We really appreciate you taking this time and learning about this really important topic. So thanks, Alan, and thanks, Marilee.
You bet. Okay, everyone. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. It's going to be beautiful, I think, here in Minnesota. So anyway, goodbye, and we'll see you in November. Thank you, everyone. Executive Committee, you can stay on, and we will be back. We will start at 9 o'clock with our Executive Committee meeting. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Have a great weekend. Bye.